When Georgie Cooper and Mandy McAllister met each other for the first time, neither one of them told the truth. Georgie said he was 21, he was 17. Mandy said she was 25, she was actually 29. Two people standing in a laundromat, building the first moments of what would become a marriage, a child, and an entire spin-off series. On a foundation where neither one of them was telling the other who they actually were. And here is the part that makes it stranger still. Even their lies weren't lying in the same direction. The real gap between them, once every fake number got stripped away, was bigger than either version of the story they had each told to look good in front of the other. That's the smallest deception sitting inside this story. The biggest one might be the show's own title, because Georgie and Mandy's first marriage is a strange thing to call something, if you stop and actually think about what that phrasing quietly implies. This is the story underneath the sweetness, the one about growing up so fast there was barely time to notice it happening. Here is the detail that the show's own creator has openly acknowledged, and it's worth sitting with before anything else. 18 years before Mandy tells Georgie she's pregnant, his own mother went through almost the exact same thing. Mary Cooper got pregnant with Georgie himself, unmarried, in a small Texas town not built for forgiving the kind of thing easily. And now, nearly 2 decades later, her own firstborn son is standing in a garage, about to tell his father that he's done the same thing to someone else's daughter. Steve Molaro, one of the people who actually built this story, has said directly that this parallel is loaded. His word, with history and feeling for everyone involved. That's not a coincidence the writer stumbled into. That's a family pattern, named on purpose, repeating itself in the same house it started in. Think about what that actually means for Georgie in the moment he finds out. He is not just becoming a father before he is ready, he is stepping, without fully realizing it yet, into the exact shape of the life his own parents built. A marriage that started as an obligation in front of a church and a town that would judge every part of it, long before it ever had the chance to become something either of them choose freely. Most of the internet's version of this story is about Georgie. It's worth showing down and actually looking at Mandy's half of it, because it's the part that usually gets skipped. She's just not the older woman in this story, whatever that framing implies. She's someone who is already estranged from her own family by the time she meets Georgie, avoiding her mother specifically, a woman later shown to be overbearing, critical, and openly harder on Mandy than on her own brother. When the pregnancy happened, Mandy doesn't go to her own parents for support. She can't. She leans entirely on a family she is known for a matter of weeks, because there is genuinely nowhere else for her to turn. And here is the detail that gets lost in every sweet young family retelling of this story, for a long stretch. Mandy doesn't even want Georgie around. She is not secretly in love with him from day one, waiting for the show to let them be together. She is a woman who got lied to about a man's actual age, found herself pregnant by him anyway, and isn't at all sure she wants him in her life going forward. While all of that's happening, she is also genuinely struggling, not in the abstract sitcom shorthand way shows usually gesture at money problems. Real specific poverty, rent she can't cover, an actual padlock that landlord puts on her door over it, tips at work getting smaller as her pregnancy becomes visible, an electric bill she can't pay, so she's living some of this by candlelight. That's not a punchline, that's a young pregnant woman with no family safety net doing the actual math on how to survive month to month. Here is where the story connects to something you might already know if you have seen our earlier video on Mary Cooper, and it's worth revisiting because it lands differently the second time around. Mary pushes hard for Georgie and Mandy to get married quickly, so the baby isn't born, in her own words, in sin. And here is the thing that should stop you cold if you remember her own history. Mary is enforcing on Mandy a standard she herself did not meet. She had Georgie the exact same way, unmarried, pregnant, young. She is not coming at this from some position of clean moral high ground. She's coming at it from a woman who knows exactly what it cost her, trying to spare someone else the same math, using the only tool she has ever had, the church and its rules. And it cost her. Mary gets ostracized by her own congregation over this. The same community she's leaned on her entire adult life. The one thing that's given her structure and identity through everything else this family has been through turns on her for her proximity to her own son's unmarried pregnant girlfriend. She is paying a real social price for enforcing a rule on somebody else that she once broke herself and was never fully forgiven for either. It's the same trap. One generation later, a woman with almost no real power in her own life, reaching for the one lever she has: faith, respectability, the church, and getting burned by that exact same institution for using it. Here is the detail that complicates the Georgie stepped up like a man version of this story that tends to get told. Georgie doesn't walk into his father's garage and confess because he's decided on his own. That honesty is the right thing to do. He does it because Dale, his boss at the time and Memo's ex-boyfriend, corners him with a flat ultimatum: tell your father yourself or I will do it for you. The moment that gets remembered as Georgie's big turn towards maturity wasn't fully his own decision. It was made for him by someone else's deadline in someone else's timeline. That doesn't erase what comes after. But it's worth being honest about where this version of Georgie actually starts. Not a boy choosing responsibility on his own terms, but a boy backed into a corner, doing the right thing because the alternative, someone else telling his father first, was way worse. Most love stories build in one direction: attraction first, commitment after. This one runs the other way. Georgie and Mandy don't start with romance and build towards responsibility. They start with an unplanned pregnancy, a woman who isn't sure she wants him around, and a teenager suddenly responsible for a family he didn't plan on having yet. Whatever actually becomes love between them gets built after all of that, piece by piece, through Georgie consistently showing up, staying present through the pregnancy, through the birth, through the unglamorous repetitive work of actually being there day after day, with no guarantee she would ever choose him back for it. That's not nothing. It's genuinely one of the more grounded version of earning it this franchise has ever told. But it's worth naming plainly what it actually is: a relationship built backwards from obligation toward feeling, not the other way around, which makes it a very different kind of a love story than the one it usually gets remembered as. Even the small details carry that weight. Their daughter Cece gets named after Memo, Constance, trying the family's messy, complicated history directly into the next generation on purpose, instead of trying to escape it. And then there is the title itself, Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage, sitting right there, doing something quietly unsettling if you actually stop on it. First implies more came after. Whether that's just the title playing with the audience or something the story genuinely has waiting down the road isn't confirmed, but it's hard to unsee once you notice it. A show naming its own central relationship in a way that leaves the door open to it not lasting before you have ever pressed the play on the first episode. So here is the actual shape of this one. Two people who lied to each other the moment they met. A pregnancy that repeated almost exactly the same circumstances that shaped Georgie's own parents' entire marriage. A woman doing real frightening math about rent and electricity while pregnant and estranged from her own family. A mother enforcing a rule on someone else that she had broken herself and paying for it twice. A confession forced by someone else's ultimatum, not chosen freely, and somehow still something real that eventually grew out of all of it. Growing up fast isn't really a choice most people get to make on their own terms. It gets handed to you, usually by circumstances nobody planned for, and you either rise to meet it or you don't. Georgie did, Mandy did, with far less support and far more to lose. Whatever comes of that title's quiet implication, what they actually built together out of lies, obligation, and a family history repeating itself, was real, even if it never should have had to start the way it did. If you are following this series, Memo's story is next, and there is a lot more hiding behind the laundromat than anyone's given her credit for.